We have all heard of the classic role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, but for those of us who haven't played it before, or even some of us who have played it, you may not have realized its potential to improve your writing and character development. Join me today as we look into D&D and how it will make you a better writer. Dungeons & Dragons is a tabletop adventure game that people have been playing for decades. I've only been into it for a year or so, but the impact it's had on my writing is tremendous. Like most role-playing games, before you can actually play D&D, you have to build a character. For this game, that is a lengthy process that sometimes can be overwhelming for new players. You choose their stats, appearance, background, and every detail about this character. Now, I'm not going to get into too much detail about the game itself. There are hundreds of YouTube videos explaining how to create a D&D character and how to play. However, what I am going to do is steal their process to show you guys how to create detailed, deeply developed characters for your own writing in a foolproof and organized way. Most writers, before starting their stories, jot down a few notes on characters. Appearance, personality, whatever they can think of.
We open on a young tomato. He's had some tough times down at the farm. You know, rabbits.
No tomatoes. Too vulnerable. Kids, they're already vulnerable.
Every writer is different, but most of the time these characters, unless they're the main character, end up being a little flat. There are several author-inspired resources to build characters, but I don't think any of them are quite as polished as a D&D character sheet. These sheets are typically stats, equipment, personality traits, physical traits, etc. In D&D, these are guides for how your character may deal with certain events or odds of success in combat. But we can use this to create characters for really anything, and make sure we're including everything we need to make them all well developed. Yes, on the surface it does sound a bit silly, but trust me, it gets you thinking about things you would never consider just jotting down notes in a binder. So let's dissect it. I have tweaked the Dungeons & Dragons design slightly and removed things that are completely irrelevant to us. First, we start with a blank sheet. This shows us everything that we should have in mind when writing this character. The whole point of this is to force you to flesh out your character and think about them in ways you may not have considered before. It is also a reference sheet for you to look at later. 1, if you have a lot of characters to keep track of, and 2, need help deciding how this character will react to a certain incident and stay in character. Once again, great for both role-playing and writing. Let's start filling it in. Begin with what's easiest and work from there. We know at least our character's name and some descriptions about them. I found it easiest to fill out the top row first. If you haven't already decided on some of these, take a moment to fill in what makes sense for them. And they don't all have to be relevant, but oftentimes they're good to keep in mind. Next, let's look at alignment. This is a fundamental part of D&D and is very, very important to character choices made in the game. And if I want you to have one takeaway from this video, it's learn about character alignment and use it in your writing. If you guys want, I can dedicate an entire video to just this topic, but in a brief summary, it's this. You have lawful versus chaotic and good versus evil. A lawful good character is someone who always does right by the law and their own moral code. They are unbreaking and unforgiving. These are your Boy Scouts. Opposite of that, we have chaotic evil. Someone who is evil for evil's sake and cares about nothing else. These are your Jokers. All of your characters will fall somewhere on this graph, and it's important to figure out where they are earlier than later. After that, we have the traits column. In D&D, these have very specific purposes for gameplay, but for our purposes, we can just make a 1 to 10 scale on how good or bad they are in that area. First, we have strength, meaning their physical abilities, dexterity, which is more of a finesse attribute, constitution, which we can interpret as more of a mental and physical fortitude, intelligence, this is more of a book smarts, wisdom, which is more of a street smarts, this also includes strategy and foresight, and lastly there's charisma, which is their ability to interact with people positively. Can they pass off a convincing lie or flirt with other characters well? This typically includes attractiveness. Once that's considered, we can use the next row of information which focuses more specifically on their personality, motives, features, etc. Out of this, what's most important for you as a writer is flaws, personality, and ideals. It's crucial to understand your character's flaws as you write them out. This, again, gives your characters depth and forces them to be more developed. After that, we can do their proficiencies, what they're skilled in, and their backstory. Their backstory is a quick blurb about how they got started, how they know certain things, where they developed their flaws and traits, etc. This can be as long or as short as necessary and can include things that won't even be in your main story, once again adding layers of depth. After that, you can always add other notes, pictures, or whatever you think you need to add. That's the basic of how this sheet works, and I think it's a valuable resource to use in character development. In recent projects, I've made these sheets for every important character just to get my thoughts organized and share my ideas with partners. I have included in this video's description a free downloadable version of a blank sheet that I use, and an example sheet to help you fill things out just in case you need it. Thanks again for checking in, keep working on those characters, and remember that writing in Dungeons & Dragons belongs to everyone. See you next time.